Something explosive is unfolding inside Team USA basketball right now. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that this situation is spiraling far beyond what anyone expected. What should have been a simple jersey assignment for training camp has turned into a full-blown crisis involving the most influential player in women's basketball, Caitlin Clark, and one of the sport's most respected legends, Sue Bird. And according to several people close to the situation, this controversy is nowhere near settling down. In fact, it's hitting a point where Team USA may be facing consequences they are absolutely not prepared for. Before we go deeper, let me ask you something directly. If you were Caitlin Clark, would you refuse to show up to Team USA camp over a jersey number? Not in theory, not hypothetically. I mean in real life, with millions of fans behind you and the entire basketball world dissecting your every move. Drop your honest take in the comments, because the debate around this is already exploding. The heart of this controversy centers around Caitlin's iconic number 22, a number that isn't just a jersey identifier, but a symbol that has followed her from Iowa to the WNBA and now into global stardom. And according to several reports, Team USA told Caitlin that she would not be allowed to wear her number at this December's training camp. It wasn't presented as a conversation. It wasn't a discussion. It was a directive, a decision already made. And Caitlin's alleged response was as straightforward as it gets. If she can't wear her number, she's not coming. That single moment instantly set off alarm bells throughout the basketball world, because this isn't a rookie making a small request. This is the single most followed name in all of women's sports. This is a player who has broken viewership records, merchandise records, ticket sales, and global interest for the sport at every level. And suddenly, she's being told she needs to abandon the number that has defined her entire identity. You don't have to be a PR expert to understand why people immediately saw this as disrespect. And then came the twist nobody saw coming. Sue Bird, the managing director of Team USA, reportedly erupted behind the scenes once she realized how fast the situation was blowing up. Sources describe her as scrambling to contain the fallout, frustrated that something so small had become something so enormous, and stunned that the organization's decision had triggered such an intense response. But the reality is simple. This was always going to happen. You don't take the most recognizable basketball number in the world right now and tell the person who made it famous that she's no longer allowed to wear it. To understand why this decision has struck such a nerve, you need to understand what number 22 actually represents. This isn't one of those situations where a player has a favorite number from childhood and wants to keep out of habit. Caitlin has openly said she picked the number as a kid, but what it's grown into now is something far different. The number is attached to her brand, her highlights, her records, and her entire rise to becoming a global figure. Fans with a number in arenas. Kids wear it at school. It appears on billboards, commercials, graphics, and broadcasts. The number 22 is part of the visual identity that instantly tells you who you're watching. Removing it isn't just a logistical choice. It's a statement, intentional or not. And here's where things start to get even more bizarre. When the training camp roster was released, the numbers were laid out for everyone to see. And right there in the middle was the detail that set the internet on fire. Not a single player on the roster is wearing number 22. Not one. The number is completely unclaimed and used and sitting wide open. So if it's available, then why is Caitlin being forced off of it? That single contradiction is what turned this from an ordinary team decision into something people are calling downright disrespectful. Think about the message it sends. You have the biggest star in women's basketball, the player who has drawn more attention to the sport than anyone in recent history, and instead of letting her keep the number she made iconic, Team USA is telling her to wear number 17, a number with no connection to her, no meaning, no branding, and no reason attached to it. And when you combine that with the number being left empty anyway, the explanation becomes even harder to understand. And this is where the speculation has kicked into overdrive, because for months, fans have been pointing out a pattern. Caitlin Clark was left off the Olympic roster earlier this year, even though she was the biggest draw in the sport and the player who had boosted global viewership in a massive way. Her exclusion shocked analysts, frustrated fans, and led to questions about whether Team USA was intentionally downplaying her rise. Many called it jealousy. Others called it politics. Some said it was simply the old guard refusing to let a new star take center stage. Now, with this new situation, those same people are saying the pattern looks too clear to ignore. It becomes even more glaring when you consider Sue Bird's position. She's the one overseeing the future of Team USA basketball. She's the one selecting players, building rosters, and managing development. And now she's the one reportedly dealing with the consequences of a decision that fans see as a direct shot at a generational talent. Whether she personally made the call or whether this came from deeper inside the organization, the responsibility lands on her shoulders. Meanwhile, Caitlyn holds all the leverage. She doesn't need Team USA to build her brand. She doesn't need Team USA to maintain her popularity. She doesn't even need Team USA to validate her career. Team USA, on the other hand, absolutely needs her. Without Caitlyn, viewership drops, ticket demand drops, mainstream attention drops, the global spotlight shifts. This is an opinion. It's proven by the numbers we've all seen over the last 2 years. So when Caitlyn allegedly said, "If I can't wear my number, I'm not showing up," that wasn't an empty threat. It was a statement of power, the kind of power that only comes from being the most important player in the sport. And that's exactly why this number change feels bigger than it looks. It's not just about a jersey. It's about respect. It's about identity. It's about whether the organization sees the value she brings or whether they still believe players should simply fall in line no matter how massive their impact is. And the fans are watching closely, because if this is how the most influential woman in basketball is treated, what does that say about how the rest of the players are valued? There's another layer here too, something deeper that connects the frustrations players have voiced for years. The WNBA continues to fight for better pay, better conditions, better travel, and better recognition. And now the biggest star in the league is being told to give up the very symbol that helped elevate the sport to new heights. It reinforces a feeling players already know too well, that their accomplishments, their influence, and their identities are sometimes overlooked by the people in charge. Even comparisons to other stars highlight the inconsistency. Plenty of players share the same number across the league. Aya Wilson, Cameron Brink, and others all wear 22. When they play together in exhibitions or all-star events, the number conflict is simply handled when necessary. But never has a player been told they need to give it up when no conflict actually exists. What's happening here goes beyond logistics. And that brings us to the final moment. The official roster list drops, and there it is in black and white, Caitlyn Clark, number 17. A decision that feels like it was made without considering her brand, her identity, or her impact. A decision that creates far more problems than it solves. And a decision that now sits squarely on Sue Bird's plate as she deals with a crisis that could have been avoided entirely. But before we get to what Caitlyn should do next, there's an even bigger question hiding underneath all of this. How did Team USA allow something this unnecessary to become a national talking point? Think about the timeline. They knew exactly when the roster would be released. They knew exactly how many eyes would be on it. They knew every detail would be dissected by fans, reporters, analysts, and entire online communities. And they knew Caitlyn Clark's number is one of the most recognizable pieces of branding in all of sports right now. Yet somehow, despite all of that, they still allowed this to happen. It raises a question that more and more fans are beginning to ask. Does Team USA truly understand the moment they're living in? Because Caitlyn Clark isn't just another young star with potential. She's already shifted the culture around women's basketball in a way that very few athletes ever have. The evidence is undeniable. She's broken viewership records that stood for decades. She's created sellout crowds across the country. She's generated more merchandise sales than the entire WNBA roster combined for several years straight. She's reached audiences that never watched women's basketball before. She's even impacted youth sports participation numbers among young girls. That kind of influence isn't something you treat casually. It requires awareness. It requires sensitivity. It requires understanding the bigger picture. And right now, it feels like Team USA is stuck in a mindset from 15 years ago, when the organization controlled everything and players simply followed whatever decisions were handed to them. But this isn't that era anymore. The balance of power has shifted in ways they can't ignore. And here's where things get even more interesting. Caitlyn Clark didn't create this power dynamic on her own. The fans did. The media did. The numbers did. Her success forced the basketball world to evolve. The organizations surrounding the sport are now trying to catch up, and some of them appear to be struggling with the new reality. You can see that struggle in the way this controversy unfolded. Instead of anticipating how fans would react to the number change, Team USA seemed genuinely shocked by the backlash. To them, it may have seemed like a minor internal decision. To the public, it felt symbolic of something much deeper, a lack of recognition for what Caitlyn represents. And because the organization didn't recognize that gap, the story exploded far faster and with far more intensity than they expected. And that leaves Sue Bird in a complicated position. Sue is a legend. She's respected across generations. She's someone players trust. But her role now is different. She's not a player anymore. She's part of the leadership. She's the person responsible for ensuring the program stays healthy, unified, and future-focused. And when you take that position, you inherit the consequences of every decision, even the ones you may not have personally made. So when reports surfaced that she was scrambling behind the scenes, trying to fix the situation before it got worse, nobody was surprised. Because Sue knows exactly what Caitlin brings to the program. She knows how rare it is to have an athlete who can elevate an entire sport. And she knows the public perception of Team USA matters almost as much as the results on the court. But here's the truth. Caitlin Clark isn't just another star who can be managed. She's a brand. She's a movement. She's an ecosystem of interest, influence, and cultural power. And when you mishandle a player like that, the consequences aren't small. They ripple. That ripple isn't just affecting fans either. It's affecting players inside the WNBA too. Privately, there are players who see the situation and feel like it reflects the larger battles they've been fighting for years. Battles for recognition, battles for respect, battles for fair treatment and visibility. And although players may not publicly comment on the number controversy out of professionalism, they absolutely see the pattern. Many of them have experienced similar situations firsthand, where an organization made decisions with no regard for how it would affect their identity or their long-term goals. This is why Caitlin's response, the alleged ultimatum, is so powerful. It isn't only about her number. It's about drawing a line in the sand in a sport where players are so often expected to accept decisions without pushback. Her stance sends a message not just to Team USA, but to every organization that deals with women's athletes. Times have changed. And in this new era, players have voices that carry weight. They have leverage. They have influence. And they have platforms big enough to challenge organizations that don't treat them with the respect they've earned. That's exactly why so many fans have rallied behind her. They see Caitlin's rise not just as a personal achievement, but as a turning point for the entire sport. They want her to stand firm. They want her to push back against decisions that don't make sense. They want her to use her platform in the same way male superstars have used theirs for decades. Because if she compromises on this, what message does it send? If the biggest star in women's basketball can be told to give up her number for no legitimate reason, then what chance does a lower-profile player have when they face similar issues? This situation has evolved beyond Caitlin Clark. It has become symbolic of how women's sports are treated at the institutional level. And that's why Team USA's handling of this situation feels so outdated. In today's landscape, the best organizations understand how to work with athletes, not against them. They understand branding. They understand identity. They understand the value of respecting a player's connection to their number, their story, and their fan base. Just look at how major international soccer teams operate. They understand jersey numbers are part of a player's history. They rarely force changes unless absolutely necessary. And when they do, it's handled with care, not surprise announcements that catch the player off guard. The NBA learned this lesson too. The league knows how much a number means to a star player. That's why you almost never see superstars forced to change numbers out of the blue. So when fans see Team USA insist that Caitlin Clark wear number 17 while leaving number 22 empty, they instinctively know something feels off. It doesn't align with how modern sports organizations operate. It doesn't reflect the reality of how valuable Caitlin is to the program. And it doesn't show an understanding of the moment the sport is living through. Now, let's talk about what could happen next, because this situation may have only just begun. If Caitlin stands firm and refuses to attend training camp, the fallout would be massive, not because of the roster implications. Team USA is full of elite talent. They would still compete at a high level, but the public reaction would be explosive. Fans wouldn't see this as Caitlin skipping camp. They'd see it as Team USA pushing her away. And they'd see it as proof that the organization isn't prepared to embrace the new era she represents. Sponsors would notice too. Networks would notice. International audiences would notice. A story like this doesn't disappear quietly. It becomes a narrative surrounding the entire camp. On the other hand, if Team USA quietly reverses a decision and gives her number 22, then the organization looks reactive and unprepared. It would be the right decision, but it would also confirm that the backlash forced their hand. There is no clean outcome for them anymore. That's how big this has become. But for Caitlin, the options are clearer. She can walk away temporarily and still be the biggest figure in the sport. She can show up wearing a number she didn't choose and still dominate the headlines. She can sit out, participate, or do anything in between, and none of it will diminish your influence. That's why this moment is so important. It's a reminder that the sport has changed forever. The organizations around it need to adapt, and the players who built this new era deserve respect that reflects the reality of their impact. So now I'll ask again, not as a rhetorical dramatic question, but honestly, what should Caitlin Clark do? Would you stand firm and refuse to compromise? Or would you show up and let your play speak for itself? Let me know in the comments. And stay locked in, because the next update in this story could shift the entire landscape of women's basketball.